Action. Okay. It's your boy Cody here. And we back. With a very special guest, man, to close out Black Music Month. Man that really don't need no introduction, but I'm gonna introduce him anyway. Mr. George Daniels, how you doing today, bro?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Man, I feel like I've been figuring out like different guests to have this month, to just talk about Black music, and this is an interview that I feel like it would just be perfect, to just have you on the couch. So I just think it's just a blessing to have you here, brother. I just want to say that because you can't speak of Black music in Chicago or just period without speaking of Uncle George Daniels, man.
Well, I truly appreciate that. It's been a lot of years, and it's just so ironic where the studios are. And of course, I live a block or so from here on Michigan Avenue.
Really?
And on Michigan Avenue from Roosevelt Road to Cermak is known as Record Row. There were more record labels in the 50s than at any other city in the country. And, when Beyonce did Cadillac Records, that was about Chess Records at 2120 South Michigan. And she portrayed Etta James. And one of my first jobs in the music business was at Chess Records. And I was Etta James' driver when I was 18, right here on Michigan Avenue. But also another part of the history, right at 14th in Michigan, Overflow Coffee Shop. That used to be VJ Records. VJ Records was the largest black record label before Motown.
Really? I ain't never.
Right? Yeah, Vivian and James. It was VEE and JAY, Vivian and James, VJ Records. They were from Gary, Indiana, husband and wife.
Okay, shout out to Gary, man. That's where Cree from, producer 219.
Yeah, it wasn't just Jackson 5 now. But no, they had some of the greatest names in the business. As a matter of fact, one of the unique things people don't know, because Capitol Records bought them all back, all of the masters and what have you, but the first record label the Beatles were ever on in America was VJ Records.
Black owned. Signed them.
VJ Records, right here at 14th in Michigan, the Beatles.
Wow.
You can go on one of these streaming services and you can find some of the songs they did on VJ.
I know, speaking of the Beatles, when I saw the movie Cadillac Records, was it, because that was Muddy Waters, right?
Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Bo Diddley, the Dells, Ramsey Lewis. Actually, Earth, Wind and Fire, when I started at Chess, Ramsey Lewis, the piano player, his band, his drummer was Maurice White.
Earth, Wind and Fire.
From Earth, Wind and Fire. Him and Charles Stephanie, a producer at Chess, got together and they created Earth, Wind and Fire.
So Chess Records it started.
Oh, but Chess, I tell you, Leonard and Phil Chess, the two white guys that they depicted in the Cadillac Records, their father was a Polish immigrant, and he had a junkyard on 29th and State Street. Back in the day before the projects, any of this is, I guess it was probably back in the 1930s or so, early 40s or something like that. And this was a black neighborhood, but it was straight up the slum. When immigrants from down south, migrants, immigrating from Mississippi and so on and so forth, and the black churches. And on Sundays, these two, they were kids. They would hear this music, and that's how they got attached to it.
Really?
Fast forward, they created a record label, Chess Records. They were originally on Cottage Grove, 43rd on the corner. I think that would be the northwest corner. 43rd and Cottage. They had a club there called the Macumbo, where all black artists used to perform. And then I think it was in 1950-something, they created the record label, Chess. And when they moved to 2120 South Michigan, this is where they really blossomed with the blues and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and so on and so forth, and Etta James. And the number one radio station back then, in those days, I said the most popular radio station that played black music, because there were no black-owned radio stations then. And every record radio station that played black music was all the way to the right of the dial on the AM. We never heard black music on FM. And the number one station was WCES back in those days that played black music. And in 1963, the Chess Brothers bought WCES, and they named it WVON, Voice of the Negro.
Really?
That's the same WVON that's on now. that Melody Span owns. Her father, Purpose Span.
So, but I thought so. Is WVON black owned to this day, or is
Yeah,
it?
it's black owned now.
Okay.
Well, it's been, Melody Span's father, Purvis Span, and a news guy named Wesley South. They bought it.
Okay.
And they still kept it WVON, of course. But but Purvis Span, E. Rodney Jones, Herb Kent, Joe. I mean, there was so many radio disc jockeys on that station. It was amazing.
I didn't know that it stand for Voice of the Negro.
Yeah.
That was
A lot of folks don't know that. People my age didn't know that, but yeah, that's what it stood for.
So I want to let's take it back to this being at Chess Records. Like being in a space with so much dope music coming out at a time where I guess I want to say like because from what I'm understanding of music, how they teach music history, they start with Motown. Like all I know about Motown being everything. So you being a kid from Chicago, being here in the heart where you say you got Etta James, Muddy Waters, these are like goats. These are goats of like music, like foundation of like what music is today.
Yes.
Like what are some of the most memorable experiences that you have being as an 18-year-old kid working in those studios?
Well, one thing, literally all of those artists, they were recording artists, but they had day jobs too. Mm-hmm. See, it's not the glamour that you see today, nowhere near. I mean, Michigan Avenue with all of those different record labels. Like I said, you can go on YouTube or either Google Record Row. WTTW did a documentary on it. There was nothing but industrial stuff around here where we are. And Michigan Avenue was just dotted with these different record labels, and they were manufacturing companies around here. It wasn't residential at all. And so it wasn't like a nightlife or anything like that. It was just quiet, industrial. You never knew what was going on in these neighborhoods. And the giants that performed there, and me being at Chess, well, I wound up there. I graduated from Hirsch in '64. I'm hanging out. I get a job at Montgomery Ward. I started going to Loop Junior College, which is now Harold Washington. And I meet this young lady. She had one more year at Hyde Park High School. And I took her to a prom and so on and so forth. She had a job at Chess Records. That's how I wound up at Chess. And that was Minnie Ripperton.
Yeah.
So that's how I wound up in the music business because of her.
You said that so casually, like,
yeah,
it's just Minnie Ripperton. Like,
yeah, well,
that's another great.
There's no doubt about it. But then, we were both teenagers. They would let us in the clubs because we worked at Chess and stuff, but we were underage. And but yeah, that's how her career started right there at Chess. And then I wound up being Etta James' driver. Then next thing you know, they put me on the road. I was driving for Billy Stewart. And that's when I really got an education. This is when artists, there'd be 5 or 6 acts on a show, and they do 5 shows a day for maybe 5 days straight. Like the original Regal here in Chicago was on 47th and King Drive. Where Harold Washington Cultural Center is? Mm-hmm. Right where that building is, there used to be Terry's Department Store, and next to Terry's was the Regal Theater. Next to the Regal Theater was the Savoy Ballroom. 47th Street back in the days was amazing, just like 63rd and so on and so forth. And so all across the country, there were theaters like that. The Apollo in New York, the Uptown Theater in Philadelphia, the Howard Theater in D.C. And usually when you did that circuit, you would leave the Howard Theater. Then they do what they call the Chitlin Circuit, the one-nighters, where you hit these different clubs in these cities. And in many cases, there were no hotels for black folks. And so we had to sleep in the cars. And that's how we moved to the South.
So would you say that Chicago, Midwest is like the birth for like black music? Like what it is now?
Not what it is now. Not at all.
Not what it is now, but like what it's grown. I know now it's more so like hip hop now, but like in its heyday.
Well, music is the soundtrack of our lives. And so today's music, it just tells the local story of what's happening this minute. It's not talking about any history whatsoever. And so when you look at the civil rights movement, we had Dr. King and so on and so forth, and then you had a Marvin Gaye saying, what's going on? Curtis Mayfield with the Impressions, Keep On Pushing. You know what I'm saying? Sam Cooke, Change Gonna Come. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so here we have this political climate today, and nobody's singing about it or rapping about it. And yet we're being divested of in every which way, and the music community is quiet. And that's what disappoints me. But when we go back to the era that I'm talking about, where many of the young people's grandparents and so on and so forth grew up in, that's what kept us going, the stories. And those songs were literally only 2 minutes, 40 seconds long, because they couldn't be any longer for one reason. Radio wouldn't play them because they had to sell so much advertising time within an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why those records were so short, but yet so powerful.
In a recent interview, you mentioned that you say rappers. I want to say you say hip hop is probably the most powerful, but the most destructive music that we have.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Can you elaborate on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, it's just like if you're a 4 or 5 year old kid, and either your parents or your big brother is listening to certain types of music, certain actions, you usually repeat what you see. You want to be like what's going on around you,
mm-hmm.
and if all you're exposed to. And now, because of technology, it's just beats. It's no musicianship, if you know what I'm talking about. And you don't realize it until later on in life. But see, there's, you know, the brain is just like a little piece of meat between your ears that controls everything. And the space that the music is covering now in our brains for young people, it's destructive. The lyrical content, the imaging that young people see. And they want to grow up to be like. I'm assuming that many of the teachers are resigning because they can't deal with the kids. Because what they're bringing from home, it's about getting wealthy and getting money and this and that quick. You know, there's a time you used to grow up and go to school and so on and so forth, and you had in your mind, I'm going to get a good job or do so and so to make a living. We were never taught, you know, do this to get rich. You know. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's the soundtrack of your lives. So it takes you through. Like for me at my age, you know, or anyone, you go back and play the music when you're 5 or 6, 7 years old. And it reminds you of the good times. It reminds you your grandmama's cooking, whatever they played at Christmas and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. It was a time where the whole family listened to the same music, you know, and you had diversity in your music, you know, classical, blues, jazz, gospel. And so just like I was talking about WVON, in the mornings when they came on the air, they started with gospel. Kids would get dressed going to school.
To gospel.
And that's one of the ways when I started George's Music Room, like 1970. That's a whole story in itself. I was my only employee the first 3 years. Mm. And I convinced the landlord to give me 90 days credit on the rent, and I brought my record player from home and what have you. My family said, "What are you doing?" And that's how I started George's Music Room. Mm. And it was a special time, you know, for me, you know. But the jobs that I had a work ethic that was second to none. And this is what prepared me to have my own.
I mean, you beat me to the punch. Like, it's a lot to unpack. Even when you just talked about just the sound, music being the soundtrack of, you know, some of our lives and what's going on. Mm-hmm. I want before we go back to the music room, I want to ask you this question. So, what if this was rap and hip hop? What's going on right now with the artists with the music that they're recording? Mm-hmm. Did you ever stop to think and say like, "Yo, this is really what's going on in their life right now"?
No, because you know, at the beginning of rap and hip hop, when it really became powerful, was the beginning of the '80s, going into the '90s, mm-hmm. when the lyrical content changed. I mean, drug dealing and all of that was going on way back in the '50s and what have you. Okay, but it wasn't glamorized. And see, so the genre of music and the style of music and the visuals that young people are seeing, they're glamorizing things that destroyed our communities. And it even destroyed it worse when crack came in. Mm-hmm. And see, so, but yet, you know, you have a millionaire going to be a billionaire that was rapping about how he made his money. You know, Diddy going through a thing, but his dad was a big Willie in the 50s in Harlem as a dealer. And so, but we didn't see those types of things. You know, with the technology today, you know, it's like the crazy things that people are doing and groups that are doing, they're able to garner a following now because of the cell phone. You know, if you have crazy ideas, you can find somebody that believes you now. In the past, all we knew was what we heard on radio or saw on TV. And see, so now there's a path, and everybody's not successful, but then the lyrical content, they're giving young people a blueprint on how to jack a car, how to stick up somebody, how to you know, pack your gun. And you know, and when you see the award shows, you know, there's a thing of either you're a performer, which most are performers, but there are very few entertainers, and there's a difference.
I give you that. But what if I can say, and this is just, I agree with what you're saying, but if I would just have to play devil's advocate, what if I say from this perspective, like groups like the Ghetto Boys, groups like NWA, people like Tupac, like that early 90s rap music, which I'm pretty sure you sold at the store.
Oh, yeah.
That display, and that was, they talked about drugs, killing women, and you know, in their music videos, Eazy-E, like it was a little wild.
Well, that was the beginning. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it had to start somewhere where it is now, but what it has progressed to. You know, even with them, you know, look how successful Ice Cube has become as a businessman. Queen Latifah, and you know, even what you call it, Method Man. You know, all of them came to the store back in the day and what have you. But, you know, they transitioned. They're not trying to be a 50 or 60-year-old rapper. You know, they transitioned into another part of the entertainment industry. But everybody doesn't do that. You know, back in the day, there was a process. Once a record label signed you or wanted you, you went through a process called artist development. They taught you how to do an interview. They taught you how to dress. You know what I'm saying? And just think about it. Motown, with all those groups, and they came out to projects. You know, Hitsville, USA was right down the street from the projects in Detroit. And all of them went through artist development. And they were all extremely articulate in the whole thing. Diana Ross, you name them. And see, so as it stands in the 90s when the transition came, because there were messages in hip-hop. You know, at the end of the 70s, going into the 80s and what have you, then it flipped, and you know, white folks turned it into, you know, gangster rap and all of that, those types of terms. But it was just lyrical content and words that rhymed. But what does it do to the mind of a youngster? You know, again, if you're 5 years old and you hear your 10-year-old brother playing it, and he's watching somebody that's 15 and so on, and see, so that 5-year-old kid ain't got a chance but going to jail.
That's what he see. That's what.
That's their blueprint.
So let me ask you this:
that's their soundtrack.
When the music first started to transition and make a shift, did you develop this thought process like, yo, this might be dangerous to the kids at that point, or you just let it, or it's something that over time you have realized like this is what it done?
Well, I had my safeguards because at that time, WGCI, the program director, was Elroy Smith. Okay. Elroy was very keen, very sharp, and stationed here in Chicago was extremely powerful. Elroy has gone to different markets now and been extremely successful. Him and that's when we used to do, I started my first back-to-school event at Douglas Boulevard and Independence. Okay. We had Aaliyah, we had Montel Jordan, Drew Hill when they first started, right there on Douglas and what have you. The big events we used to do in my yard on the side of the store, or either shut Roosevelt Road down. But we would sit with the acts, the artists, just before, and tell them, hey, one cuss word come out your mouth, we're cutting the mic off. Simple as that. That's me. I was strict on that. You know, when they came out with the parental advisory sticker on the CD, I was parental advisory before they had a sticker. You know, see, the one thing about being a neighborhood merchant, you're part of the community. See, you all kind of grew up without that. you know, you used to be, you get your first job around the corner from your house. Your mama knew the store owner and the whole thing. I pride myself in that. You know, my first 3 years, I was my only employee, but then once I started hiring, I hired one kid and another kid. And, you know, I moved from 3937 to the big store that everybody else knows, you would know, at 3915, which used to be a church, the building I was in. It used to be True Vine Baptist Church. And remember Marvin Hagler, the boxer? You had heard of him. That was his grandfather's church. And they had a school on the second floor. They had a fire. I was next to it in my small store, and they closed it down. So eventually I wound up getting that building. And the neighborhood, literally the neighborhood came and helped me build that store. And they upstairs I turned into my apartment. And so at my peak in that location, I had 15 full-time employees. And they all walked to work. They're from the neighborhood. You know, Dorian Minor, you know, the group The Firm. They do all of the parties and what have you, big events. It's called The Firm. Well, anyway, Dorian, he was 13 when I gave him his first job, and he always credits me with getting him started properly. And he just retired 2 years ago from the water department with the city, based upon the discipline of a work ethic. Our young people, I just want to get a job. You know, but you don't know how to work. You know the responsibility. You know how when you go into a restaurant or what have you, and the waiter or waitress, they treat you a certain way, and you don't like it. Well, don't say nothing to them. Go to who hired them. If you don't have any training, you know. And this is the whole darn thing. Our store was special because I had some of the best employees, but I trained them. I was like Mr. Miyagi. You know? But it was when you put your name on something, you know, you want your customers to have an experience, especially even your regulars. There'd always be an experience. And I learned that from my parents. My mother worked them until the last half an hour before I was born in my parents' first restaurant in the Bronx, New York.
Okay.
And by the time I started school, we moved from the Bronx to Queens, but they had the restaurants in the Bronx and Harlem by then. And that's where I got my work ethic from.
So how long was you in New York?
I was in New York up until 7th grade. Then I was shipped off to Texas to live with my grandmother.
Okay. So
that's how I know about Fifth Ward.
Yeah. So by you moving around like that, so were you technically, so are you a New Yorker? Are you Chicagoan? Which one?
I'm
a Texan?
I'm everything.
Everything?
Oh yeah. Well, it was a unique experience as an individual. At my age now, I'll be 79 this coming December, right?
Good for 79.
And I don't have literally one friend my age that I hang with or know from way back. Because I was moved around. Like I said, I started school in Queens. My mom and dad got divorced. My two sisters were married and moved away. Just left me and my mom. She got a couple of the restaurants or what have you. So we moved from Queens. I left my little school, 6th grade, moved to Jackson Heights. That's near LaGuardia Airport. I remember Larry, Georgie, Rayfield, and Judy. I don't remember their last names, but those are my 4 friends from kindergarten to 6th grade. And then I moved from Queens and moved to Jackson Heights. I started this other school, PS 143. And then I graduated from 6th grade in New York. You graduate from 6th grade, then go to junior high school. Started junior high school, about 2 months at PS 17. Mother comes home, said, hey, you want to go to Texas, live with your grandma? I said, yeah. My grandmother owned Mama Alice's Cafe, connected to the house we lived in, across the street from this junior high school, E.O. Smith, 5th Ward. And that's my experience coming from New York, where I went to integrated schools. And down there it was all black. And so when I saw colored only, white only, shit like that, I experienced that. Water fountains and so on and so forth. If you went to the movies, the black folks had to sit in the balcony. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was an experience. So I was there.
What was like some of your most memorable, like, what's the most standout memory experiencing like racism in the South?
Just the shock coming from New York at a young age like that, and then being exposed to it, not, even going to school with them, New Yorkers saying yeah and no. down there saying, yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
ma'am,
no,
no, sir,
ma'am.
yeah.
Man, I was getting whooped every day at school. my grandmother had to come explain to them, where I came from. But it was one time my cousin, she drove me to the swimming pool, and she was going to come back and get me. And swimming the black swimming pool, where black folks go. And so I was waiting and waiting, and so I remember how she would, drove. I'm a New York kid. I know how to walk. So I started walking home, and I didn't know no better. These white folks coming out, I'm waving at their ass. They wondered, what the hell is this black kid doing? And I'm just walking down. All of a sudden, the car pulled up. It was my cousin. She grabbed me. She said, boy, what are you doing? I said, I was walking home. I didn't know any difference. I didn't know any better. But they would have, I might not be here today had she not showed up when she did, because I did not know. I didn't realize the segregation thing. From the experience, because after school I'd play with my white friends or what have you, but even then in New York there was a separation line that was not that evident. But the housing community that we lived in, and then across Parsons Boulevard is where my white friends lived. But we used to meet in the swamp, and I did catch tadpoles together and so on and so forth. Yeah, but that was something I always remember. This is. You can still faintly see, I think I was about 8 years old, these stitch marks I fell while playing with my friends, and we were closer to my white friends. So I said, come on. We ran to his house. He opened the door and called for his mother. She ran down, and she said, Mom, my friend, she said, get that nigga out of here. I thought we let something in. I didn't know I was the nigga. I thought, yeah. But that was my first experience, but I didn't realize it for years. And I ran home. My sister took me to the hospital and got the stitches. But that came back to me years later. That's what that was.
And this was in New York.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in Queens. And see, we didn't use that term nigga at all. I didn't know what you was talking about. We were colored. I mean, dudes would get pissed off if you called them black.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, look, the system has played with us in our heads for so long. It's just like black music used to be called race music.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Before they called
race
R&B.
music?
Because it's a black race. That's the way they would. Because again, radio stations played all white music, and there's the few that would play black music with black owner. It was I think James Brown was the first black owner of radio stations in America.
So
I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So you just spoke on the N-word. Like, I'm a person, I really hate the N-word too. How take me through your mind when you first heard it flip? When you seen each other when you seen us calling each other N-word.
It was so derogatory for us back in the day. But it wasn't as used as blatantly when I was coming up as a kid. There was so much more community. Even when I started George's in the neighborhood, what have you. I remember when breakdancing first started, I used to keep the cardboard behind the door of my store, so when kids got off school, because I had the speaker outside, that's where they be breakdancing in front of my store, little youngsters after school. That was the safe spot in the neighborhood. Yeah, so it's totally different. Our youngsters now are growing up on totally nothing but fast food. There are no neighborhood businesses where you get your first job. There's nothing but foreigners that have them. And see, I saw that transition with businesses in the neighborhood where George's first started there. And the liquor stores and what have you, which wound up being the mini grocery stores. And you stick your money in a hole and get your products through a Lazy Susan behind the bulletproof glass and what have you. But that never was before, ever, in our communities. The merchants, the business people in the neighborhoods were always, you knew everybody. I used to grab kids when they were acting up and, pop their butts and take them home to their mamas. And the kids said, I'm going to tell my mom, get to the door, George, what do you do? And you can see in the eyes, dang, he knows my mama. And so, but it was community. And see, so I'm proud of that. And, the upbringing that I had, it was fragmented, but made me the person that I am, and I literally can get along with anyone because when I wound up getting to Chicago, I was starting 8th grade. Because when I left Houston, I wound up in Philadelphia with one of my uncles.
Man, you was everywhere, man.
Yeah, yeah. And I get a call from my brother, who was in medical school to become a dentist. He was married, had one child, and said, "Hey, you want to come to Chicago?" And I said, "Yeah." So I came here starting 8th grade. Okay. And Holy Trinity at Taylor and Walcott. The school is still there. And at that time, this I guess 59, and it was me and 2 other black kids in the 8th grade class. The rest were Italian kids from Little Italy on Taylor Street. And my brother was in dental school. I graduated from 8th grade. Instead of going to Crane, I went to Farragut my first 2 years. And in 1962, my brother graduated from dental school. And at the original McCormick Place, which was one building on the lake, there were 3,000 medical school graduates, and 6 were black, and 1 was my brother.
Shout out to my brother.
See, those he passed in 2019. But if anybody knows, 79th and Carpenter, you know that Cookies Lounge, and across the street, the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
They named it Dr. Max Newsom Way, that street right there, and the dentist building. That was my brother.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but he took care of me from 8th grade through high school. Yeah. And so I've had those examples and solid role models, but yet changing environments. Like every place I went, I was a new kid. Even when I graduated from that little Catholic school, I was supposed to go to Crane, but it wasn't too good back in those days. So he used his in-laws' address, and I went to Farragut my first 2 years.
Then you ended up at Hirsch.
And then Hirsch, when he graduated, we lived on Ogden Avenue, right across the street from County Hospital, and we moved to 85th and Drexel. And then I finished up at Hirsch.
Okay.
My second 2 years, again, the new person.
So now this new person gets this job at Chess Records.
Mm-hmm.
He moving through the city, so you a bad man at this point. You got them behind you.
Well, again, there were no big names like that. There were popular recording artists, Adele's, so on and so forth. But many of these artists had day jobs. Also, it wasn't like, Minnie wasn't known like that back then. She became that. Minnie would sing with a girls group called the Gems. And then she'd sing background, like Fontella Bass, Rescue Me, that song, Rescue Me. That's Minnie in the background. Minnie did background work with Ramsey Lewis. She did it with Bo Diddley. Many of the groups. Then she did a solo project under the name of Andrea Davis called Lonely Girl. Andrea was her niece's name, and Davis was her manager's last name.
Okay.
And it had it grew some legs, if you will. But the unique thing about it, Chess Records was owned by the 2 guys that owned WVON. So they would play all their music. And so Minnie got known as Andrea Davis, and they let us into the clubs anyway. And Tyrone Davis, who would be singing, you familiar with him? He's a Chicago guy, famous. And they would always say, Andrea Davis is in the audience. We'd get her to come up and sing, because she would hit them high notes. And Minnie would get up and sing. Because I didn't have a car, we could take the bus and stuff. And while she's in the middle of singing, I'd go give her $1. And everybody we'd be on the corner counting our loot. But no, but we stayed good friends and what have you. And that song, Memory Lane, back down, her and her husband wrote that about me and her.
Really?
Yeah. We always laughed about that. So when she passed, that was rough. That was something else. But
so that was like your high school sweetheart.
Well, in a sense, because I had graduated already, and I met her in the last year of her high school.
Right.
But yeah.
Had some time.
I walked past her house when I met her a couple of weeks ago. She used to live at 61st and Woodlawn. That's where she lived.
Okay.
Dating, yeah.
Back there in Memory Lane. That's a classic. That's about Uncle Joe. That's what I'm saying. You just embedded it in just music history.
Yeah, it's it's been a heck of a journey, and it continues.
It continues because we ain't even get to like, yo, what made you get the idea to like, yo, I'm finna open this record store. Mm-hmm. This record store that changed the music industry. I want to say.
Yeah, well, I worked for a black man because I always had a job, and he had One Stop Records Incorporated. One Stop, like Barney's One Stop, Joe's. They were record stores, but they sold records to other stores, and they called them One Stops, like a sub-distributor. Mm-hmm. And his name was Jimmy Minette. He had his place at 17th in Michigan. And I got a job with him after, because my dad, we had restaurants on 47th Street. Okay. I worked with my dad, and I started working for this gentleman. And just learning how to pull orders and pack records and so on and so forth. Because at that time, music was the most important thing in a black family's life. And there were not any, say, black stores that were just all music. It would be like Sonny's TV Repair and records, Lee and Bob's Cleaners and records, and so on and so forth. And I know that because he created literally mobile one-stops, and I was one of them. I'd have records in the trunk of my car, and I would visit these stores and sell them records out of the trunk of my car. You know, they may give me 3 Marvin Gaye or 5 Gladys Knight, so and so forth, and I'd have them in the trunk of my car.
Oh, so you were out hustling.
Every day I was out there, and I had over 200 accounts. I've sold a lot of music, and then these are, quote, mom and pop stores, and usually Fridays and Saturdays they get busy. Next thing you know, I'm behind the counter with them, helping them sell the records that I sold them. And then the guy I worked for, he had other stores as well, and he put me in charge of a store on Madison, 2935 West Madison. And I was running that store, and then he bought a record shop at 3900 on Roosevelt and put me in charge of that. I was running that. Then he wanted to close it, and I went to him. I said, would it be all right if I got the store? He said, well, go talk to the landlord. And that's how I started George's Music Room. I convinced the landlord to give me 90 days credit on the rent. Brought my record player from home, and the rest is history.
I think in one of them interviews I seen that you said that you made $100K out selling out your trunk.
I didn't make it. I sold but an average of $100,000 a month out of the trunk of my car. That's what I sold, but I didn't make that money. That was wholesale.
Okay. So
he
made the money.
No, well, it's the records cost so much,
right?
And so from the cost of the record to what you sell it for, that's the profit,
right?
But then out of the profit, you pay bills and so on and so forth. But my gross income, my gross sales were $100,000.
And in that time, you was making $100,000. And this is in the 60s.
Was selling.
I mean, you was selling $100,000.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of us that was doing that. This guy was so smart, and I truly appreciate the education I got. And I made a decent living, doing that. It wasn't about getting rich. But, I had an apartment, car, and so on and so forth, yeah.
No, I just think that just shows how much of a need music was. Like, music generated that much money.
Oh, God. That was... What other entertainment do we have? I mean, there's a tie that I wear sometimes, especially to the white functions, that I get dressed up, and on this tie, I have the picture of buckwheat. And I made sure they see it. That was, when I was a youngster, that's the only black person I saw on TV every day. The Little Rascals, Buckwheat and Stymie. The bald-headed little black kid and Stymie. That's what I saw on TV every day when I was a kid. The first black man or black person to have a TV show when I was a kid was Nat King Cole. Every Monday, he was only on for 15 minutes. And it was like a variety show. He'd have other artists come on. And this is when black and white TVs, everybody didn't have a TV. But the neighborhood would be empty for a few minutes.
Just to see Nat.
Because that's who represented us.
Shout out to Nat.
And see, so we all, the journey, through life, and you sit back and reflect on those things that shaped who you are. It's just like you were responding to the $100K a year in sales, a month, but I was selling to black record stores. These are black folks buying. And see, payday, every Friday, people would be in these record shops. in the neighborhoods they had bars and clubs with live music. Wasn't no DJs. It'd be a jukebox in there. People play. You know what jukebox is?
I know what jukebox is.
And and these are the things that created the commerce in our neighborhood. My father, when him and my mom, they opened up restaurants in New York, and when he came to Chicago, we opened up on 47th Street. And there's a certain way, as long as you know the business, and the bread man, milkman, the coffee man, and the jukebox. Those are the 4 businesses that you borrowed money from. They loaned you money because you buy their products every week. And the jukebox, they get their money back from people playing the jukebox. But you'd have to know how to do business, and just make a loan and then don't know how to run. But Dad was really sharp at it. But that's how we had, where the ice cream parlor is on Wabash and 47th now? Right under the Rosenwall. There's a beautiful ice cream parlor.
Yes, I know you're about, yes.
That used to be Mr. D's Steakhouse. That was my dad.
Oh, sure.
Yep. This is when there was the alderman, his name was Ralph Metcalf. He was the alderman, and he was right across the street in that vacant lot. His offices were there. And then we had Mr. D's Corned Beef House at 229 East 47th. Then we had a smaller little breakfast-type place right under the L on 47th. And,
so black businesses was booming. Man.
Oh, my God. No, even over there where George's was, every black community, there was a time you could park your car on 63rd and South Park, back then South Park, King Drive, and all the way to Stony Island, nothing but black businesses. Cottage Grove, every place. Everybody had jobs. The only reason you didn't have a job, your ass didn't want to work. And
I wonder what happened. I wonder what was
the jobs, the businesses. At one time, the stockyards here in Chicago, and you wouldn't be familiar with them, but Chicago was known as the slaughterhouse of America. When you go across 35th Street going south, you see all those railroad tracks, and you say, you don't see nothing on them now? That's where all the livestock used to come. So over there around from 35th going all the way out to like 47th, what have you. Nothing but meat packing houses over there, slaughterhouses. And imagine how many people worked. Then one of my jobs out of high school was at U.S. Steel, Southworks. I worked there. Montgomery Ward at Chicago Avenue and the River. Used to be the mail order house. On the west side, Sears and Roebuck. The big old building over there, Holman Square. 25,000 people a day worked there. The only way it didn't work, you just didn't want no job.
So it was money out here to get.
Well, see, automation and now technology has taken away everything. People are talking about it, and it's frightening when I look at it, from the eyes of an elder, how fast things went that I thought was fast. Now, with this AI and all of that, and they're talking about it, and even with Amazon, which is now putting everybody out of business. But Amazon uses 750,000 robots right now.
I ain't know that.
Pulling them orders. That's how big. When you ride out, even here in certain areas of Chicago, you see these big cement buildings and what have you. Those are storage places. Those are like Amazon warehouses and what have you. Shipping stuff everywhere. You find once you get in the habit of doing certain things, hell, I won't get up and go get no aspirin. I pull my phone out here to Amazon. I have it tomorrow.
Nah, that's real. I just used Amazon to deliver me some stuff yesterday.
Yeah. And see, so it's a progression that we don't realize it because we don't have a connection to our history. And youngsters have grown up now never having a job other than hanging in the street. But that neighborhood place, that's why I said I had so much pride in myself, and everybody that worked for me had gone on to do well for themselves. But when I first started George's, there was a laundromat next door to me. Then Kurt's Westside Hair Center did men's and women's hair. Next to them was John's Restaurant. John's wife was Quincy Jones' aunt. Next to him was Raymond's Barbershop. Then the black man had the hardware store and so on and so forth. Just right there in the block where I was at. And this was everywhere in the city.
So it was thriving.
Yeah. And see, you learn how to work from getting your first job around the corner from your crib. You know, because everybody knew everybody. It was like every community had a village. It was just amazing, and generations now have grown up without that type of attachment. You know, every business they've seen has always been a foreigner.
That's real.
You know?
From
And
the
see,
gas
so
stations, from the grocery
yeah,
store.
and see, so you grew up with an inferiority complex. Yeah, I ain't supposed to own no store 'cause I never seen me. You know, now all the Indians own the liquor stores, and so on and so forth, and you just see that pattern. Well, see, they coming from a country that had commerce. The number one tax grossing street, Chicago, is the Magnificent Mile, Michigan Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 street is 26th Street, from Weston to Cicero. Ride down there one day, look at all those small businesses, Mexicans. That's the way our neighborhoods used to be. Every neighborhood, South Side, West Side, wherever we were, there was black commerce. Black Wall Street was everywhere. It wasn't just, it was burnt up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was something major because of oil wells and stuff, but you didn't have to depend or had to go anywhere and buy anything from anybody else but yourself. There was a time here in Chicago, you go downtown shopping, you can go to like Marshall Fields or the big department store, but you could buy the clothes, but you couldn't try them on. Black folks couldn't.
Yeah.
This is where the commerce came from in our neighborhoods.
You just go shopping in the neighborhood.
Yeah, look, as a black business person, that's what we patronize ourselves.
So
And see, so we have been so programmed not to even understand what that means. You know, our politicians pride themselves in giving kids summer jobs. But if you're not taught a work ethic, you see these youngsters on these jobs with their uniforms sitting around. No personality, no attitude, no, not being taught to be grateful to have a job. That's how I was taught. That's how the whole generation of us, of black folks, for years and years. But our culture has changed, and a lot of it has to do with the music. Because what do our young people hear today in hip hop that's uplifting? What are the images that young girls see that show signs of success? Being naked. When lyrics got so bad in hip hop, or got to the point where radio just couldn't bleep out enough, then they started breaking records in strip clubs. Now you see where some of your hip hop females come from, out of the strip club arena. Lil' Kim was one of the first. And see, so it follows a pattern. And so, success is having all of the things. Now, I'm just as guilty. I'm not talking like, because I was taught to be a consumer. To consume, I sit back and look at my crib and I got all this shit. What did I need all this stuff for? I got stuff in storage. But that's how we're programmed. And now, just sit back and think how you've been programmed over the years. Things you feel you have to have. But it's a system, and we're it's a thing where I've told some young people, even some older folks, just Google privatized penitentiaries. Have you ever done that?
Mm-hmm.
You see how many there are, and they're expanding. And you know why? Youngsters grow up and they're gonna have to have more places to put us. Because all we know how to do is just, if there's an opening, take it. And see, so it's our values, which used to be they call like community values, where they don't exist.
Yeah, I know. I've been real religious lately, or just spiritual. I want to say. I know this month at New Life Church, it's called Slaying Your Goliaths, Pastor Hannah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Pastor Hannah. Mm-hmm. I know him from way back.
Yeah. One of the recent sermons they talked about was music, and like the music that you listen to, you can consume, how it can control your thought process, what you do, and just control your spirit. So everything you're saying, I can see what it aligned. But it hasn't always been like that. It's one thing I think I know that's why I'm glad we got you here, because even though you seen the transition, there's probably nobody that we can physically touch and talk to, like, to really just talk to us about the transition and just how, like, black culture and black community in Chicago alone has transitioned over the last 40 years. So what are some of those good moments when you have that store, like, that you're proud of when it comes down to black music and community?
Oh, there's so many. One of the main things I pride myself on, see, because even though I talked about the negative things and what have you, and I still held on, I went through a 10-year crack addiction myself.
Really?
And yes, right there on Roosevelt Road. The neighborhood saw me just blow everything. And I
It's like
lost
the
a
80s,
lot.
90s, what?
In the 70s,
70s.
going into the 80s. The first time I tried it was May 1980. I'll never forget it. There's a whole story goes behind it, but y'all see it because I just did it. Well, they finished it. They have been shooting it for over 3 years, my documentary.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm not the perfect person. I'm human like anyone else, and curiosity got me, and I got involved. I lost condos, cars, all kinds of stuff, and in the neighborhood, the community saw me do that, saw me go down the hole and what have you, and they saw me come back up. And when that building that I'm in, I told you about, came available, I was just pulling myself up and got that building, and it was burnt out shell. And I'm trying to figure out what to do. A friend of mine that worked for the city, he kept the inspectors away from me. And this other guy came, electrician, he got the lights on in the building. And I'm not know what the heck am I going to do, but then we started doing certain things around there. And one day, because it was all boarded up, I was knocking on the door and opened. I said, yeah, it's Alex, who has since passed, a little Puerto Rican guy. He said, Reverend Coleman and Reverend Scott from the big church down the street on Central Park. He said, I'm looking for George. I said, I'm George. He said, well, Reverend Scott says I need to come down there and I can help you. I said, well, help me. He said, let me see. I let him in, and he looked around, and he asked me what did I want to do, and I gave him my ideas. He said, okay. I said, well, I don't have much money. He said, don't worry about it. And next thing you know, what you see, the neighborhood, the dudes hanging in the pool room, they all came. Everybody wanted to help. I mean, some guys got together and they turned the little school upstairs into my apartment, the whole darn thing. But the neighborhood built that store for me, and the Puerto Rican guy. All that glass in the front and stuff. I mean, it's the things that came back, but how I was able to get my life back together and open that store. I'll never forget, in December, just before Christmas, 1989, I got back open. And, I backslid a few times, but then I finally broke that habit. And it was uphill from there.
Uphill from there.
Yeah, but it was it lost a whole bunch of material things, but I gained so much back, too. And, it's the thing that I'm most grateful for at my age is my health, because I lost a lot of friends, a lot of associates, I would say, and I survived that, yeah. And that's why I don't mind talking about it. I can talk all the good things, what have you, but I'm human, and I did go through that, but I survived. That's why I don't attack people who have problems. Mm-hmm. You try to help them look for solutions.
That's facts.
Yeah.
I see it. It was crazy coming into this interview. I was thinking we was gonna get like crazy music stories and stuff like that, but it seemed like, I ain't gonna lie, I like what I'm getting. I'm actually, because I see Uncle George at the parties. I see him from afar, but it's like, this is my first time actually like. I feel like I'm getting to know you. Like, you really like Unc to me now. Like, so
I appreciate that. Well, it's just being straight up. I had great stories. Maybe we'll do a chapter 2 someday. But I got stories of Queen Latifah and what have you. When she came here to hang out, it was so funny at the Shark Bar. Used to be a place on the north side of Shark Bar. She was riding down the street, and she was in a limo. I said, George. And so I went and talked to her. So I met him at the Shark Bar that night, and having a good time, her and Shakim, her partner. And we danced. Next thing I know, I hit bottle break and what have you. And she had a security, but these dudes had jumped him and messed his shoulder up and stuff. Queen Latifah was up there knocking cats out. And Shakim busted the dude upside the bed. Look, they knocked everybody out.
Queen Latifah had
Yes. I'm up here trying to help. All I did was get blood splashed on my jacket. But we had to take our security guard to Northwestern that night. I mean, we hung out all night long. But yeah, like stories like that. I mean, it's a journey, and being on the Tom Joyner cruise and doing all kinds of stuff.
I remember off mic, you was telling us about how the Ghetto Boys and how you helped do a die crucial conflict. Like, tell us how that come about.
Well, it's Do or Die, and they grew up right down on Central Park, and when the artists would come, all the young people would be at the store and what have you. Mm-hmm. And I had a special way of treating the neighborhood kids because, when I first started George's, nobody knew who I was. Shoot, all my customers came from around the corner, and so I was always partial to my little village. And so all of the youngsters, and they knew how to conduct themselves at George's and stuff. And so they were just young guys. And when all of the artists would come, the managers would come with them and so on. So I'd introduce them. And I remember when Crucial had their first CD. It was so funny. They had flat tops with a blonde streak in it and stuff. That was cold heart. But Do or Die, I influenced Jay Prince's people and Leslie Wyatt, who's still with them. See, Jay has taken care of all his people, because it's Fifth Ward. He literally owns a big chunk of Fifth Ward. He built his mama a big old mansion in Fifth Ward. Okay. And so I have to go down there. My nephew, one of my nephews and his partners, they built a club called Off the Record. I don't know, may have talked about it on the Willie D thing, but it's downtown Houston. And the VIP room is George's music room. My nephew, I gave him, some of my memorabilia they used, at least it. And it was just so proud of the fact that he thought that much of me to want to create. I did news interviews when they did the grand opening and stuff. It's a slick club, so it's a possibility we may be doing something up here soon, similar to that. And
is Off the Record still going? Is it still here? Yeah, like in Houston?
Off the Record. It just opened 3 years ago. Yeah,
I'm about to go check it out in Houston.
Yeah, it's on Main Street. It's right downtown.
I'm gonna go check it out. I love Houston. Next time I'm gonna check it out. I know it was a stint that I know a lot of people attach you to. It's like your guy says name, who should not be named. Everybody, the king of R&B, R. Kelly. Like you was very influential in him. So how did that relationship come about, and then how did it end?
Well, it came. I used to see Rob in the subways, playing and what have you, and as time had gone on, with me having the store and so on and so forth, and his career, it was nothing like we hung out or nothing like that. But he was just an artist. I had the record store, but then my background in the business. And when I married Regina, my wife, in '93, Rob was, doing his thing. And my wife used to be Whitney Houston's publicist. Mm-hmm. And so she was pretty sharp at what she does. And I think they were in Atlanta. Yeah, they were. And Rob's manager called me, and they needed a publicist or whatever. Wondered if my wife would do it. So I set that up, and she became Rob's publicist. And so every time we did events and what have you, he had an album release. Of course, they wanted to do it at George's because we did it better than any store in the country, black or white. We create an experience. This is something our businesses don't understand, or they just don't realize it, the importance of that. And again, it comes from my father in the restaurants, how people just love to come to Mr. D's, for breakfast and on the way to work, because he'd always have something nice to say or something pleasant. They'd leave with a smile. And I grew up with that. my grandmother in Mama Alice's Cafe in Houston and so on and so forth. So it's something that I carry with me all my life. You know, and when it comes to any type of business, it's about your customers, period. I mean, if you're an artist, that's what I was saying earlier. You know, people perform, but do they entertain? There's a difference, you know. And it's like when you look at the old schools up near Apollo, the Regal here in Chicago, and how the artists dressed. You know, they had loud outfits and what have you, and that's what you paid to go see. You paid to go be entertained. And that's what they did. You know, but, you know, we used to get dressed up to go downtown or go to the, you know, the stage shows and so on and so forth. You didn't go stage show and, you know, somebody on stage looked like you or dressed like you. You got entertained, you know. And it was just an amazing time then, and for me to see the transition, you know, and it's
you saw the transition completely in Chicago music. So you done saw Kanye West, you done saw the Commons.
Oh yeah.
So I know Saba say he got a good relationship with you because his uncle worked at your shop, right?
Yep. Yeah,
so who was like? Would you say like your I don't want to say your favorite, but the ones that stood out to you that when you first saw him, you like, yo, you gonna be something?
Well, of course, you know, they are Kelly and Common, Twista. They all used to hang at the store. Before they had a record deal and stuff. They become the CD artists that we would have at the store. And so, but they've all gone on to do very well. Kanye now, if his mother hadn't passed, this would not be the Kanye we see. I guarantee you that.
Do you know Miss Donda?
Oh, yeah. Yep, I got a couple pictures with her.
What was she like?
Oh, wonderful lady. Very... very understanding. She's really nice, man. And she kept him anchored, and you know, because he's had his issues, psychological issues, you know, medication and stuff like that. And when he don't take the meds, that's where he goes off. Some with his mother, he would have never messed with the Kardashians, any of them.
If his mom was here.
His mom was here. Yeah, yeah. So it's a thing to, you know, watch young people grow up, and the exposures and the influences.
That music industry, something else. I know you. I want to get a few of these questions out. One question I got for you is, what do you feel like is next? Because when you started the music, you was like physical records that we talked about, record stores, in stores. What do you now in 2025? How do you feel? How do you see the music industry surviving?
Well, I tell you, by revisiting its history, which is why vinyl has become so popular. And from the standpoint of the physical product, if the attachment that a fan had in those days, you know, young people used to put the album covers on the wall. And then, you know, Halloween, I didn't give candy out. I used to give posters because, you know, they'd always send me stacks of promotional posters. That's what I wish I kept some of them posters now. God, they'd be worth a fortune. But it's a thing where you had that attachment. Then, you know, to come to a store. And it creates a different personality. And my employees, just like any store, you knew Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Mary, and so and so forth, and what have you, first name basis. And you knew the type of music they like. And they come and ask you, oh, I got this for you, so and so, what have you. And it's that camaraderie and that just doesn't exist anymore. You know, it's but the return of vinyl, the curiosity that people are having, not just from the physical standpoint, but from the sound. So you have to realize you grew up with compressed music.
CDs, yeah.
Once, you know, when I started George's, my first tapes were 8 tracks. Then cassettes came in, but the vinyl was still always there, the 45 record and the album. But you didn't realize the difference until you compared the same record on CD versus the vinyl. And you'll see the difference in your brain, in your ears, your eardrums. And you hear instruments that you didn't hear even on a CD, but you hear it on the vinyl. You know? And I attempt to influence younger people or young people to get a turntable and just experiment. see what the difference is and how it has affected. It affected the music. But before the digital stuff started, I remember when Napster came out. That was the beginning of the end of record stores. And do you remember what Napster was?
Yeah, I was on the LimeWire, all that.
Oh yeah, when you got all the music free and stuff, and then the industry started coming after black stores because we were selling the mixtapes and what have you. And see, so everybody was just going crazy. What the heck are we gonna do? I remember going to one of the presidents of the labels, and I said, is this gonna be the end of the record business? Oh no, Josh, no. And see, one of the things that I also did, I joined a retail organization called NARM, National Association of Recording Merchandisers. That was Tower Records and so all of those things. So that was a big, powerful organization. I was literally like the only black member of this organization. And I was influenced by one of the veterans. You remember Clarence Avon?
Yeah, I know Clarence.
He was one of my mentors, too.
That's dope.
He used to be on Michigan Avenue one of the first black distributors of major labels was Ernie and George Leaner at 1827 South Michigan. The business is still there. They had a studio upstairs at a record label called Wonderful Records. With Wonderful. And those are my mentors. And when I started my store, I remember Ernie, he always, me and his son were really close, and he used to treat me like a son. And in 1972, I hadn't even been open 2 years or so. He said, I want you to come down to the NARM convention. And I did. It was in New Orleans. And that's when I was first exposed to this organization. And 20 years later, I wound up on the board. In the 90s, I was the first person of color to ever be on the board in NARM. And then I took what they call a NARM Retail Certification Program, which nobody, even with record stores, black stores, know nothing about. It was at the University of Chicago. It was for 7 days, 12 hours a day. And where I learned the merchandising and all this stuff, how to set up the store where, you take your customer all the way through with your displays and so on and so forth. I learned how to get the marketing dollars out of the record labels. And then I started, me and Mary Datcher. You know Mary?
I'm familiar. I think she do Global Mix too.
Yeah, Mary worked with me for a while too.
Yeah.
And she was with me when I organized black stores across the country. And I created a National United Independent Retailers organization right there from Georgia to Roosevelt. And so there's a lot of good things, man.
Yeah, there's a lot. I want you to get them off. I know we got the documentary coming out, so everybody gonna hear about them on that.
Yeah, well, you can actually go on either YouTube or Google Uncle George, the Music Man, and you see the trailer.
What made you close the store?
Who's behind rap? Who's behind music?
You ain't think like you could do something else with it, like some merch or?
Well, that's happening now because this foundation has got the building now and they're restoring it.
Okay.
And it's going to be like a museum. We're going to do a studio upstairs. Actually, I was talking to the guy today, and going to probably come up with a concept like the tiny desk.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the word? The ends on that, man. We gotta be there with the artists, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And see, so many would come back.
Yeah.
Because of their first experiences at George's. Because, man, we made every artist feel special before they became stars.
Did Jay-Z and Beyonce ever come through there?
Beyonce, yeah. Oh, Destiny's Child. When they were kids, me and Matthew still tight. I talked to him a couple times a month.
Okay, sure.
Beyonce's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, they signed autographs in the yard out there when they first started. And Bow Wow must have been about 7, 8 years old when he came.
I know that was a crazy experience.
Yeah,
I know he had hella people.
No, he was a little boy back then.
Okay.
He actually, his song first hit, I Want to Thank You. If you look at that video, you see part of it's in front of the store. And they shot it around on 13th and Avers at the schoolyard over there.
Yeah, it was crazy. There's a few girls in my classroom that was in that video.
Oh,
I want to
okay.
thank you. So yeah, that's good. So what was your craziest in-store experience? Like, this was just bananas.
The craziest was with the Ghetto Boys, the Resurrection album.
Okay.
And we created like a big tunnel in the back of my store to go into the yard because we had a tent in the yard where the Ghetto Boys were. And the promotion guy from Capitol Records, Kelly Robinson, never forget. And so, because we were going to have coffins and all kinds of things. We had headstones made. And I had Ghetto Boys in the tent. Because you come in, you bought the CD, and you went through the tunnel, and they signed the CD, then you go out through the yard. And this is before, when midnight hit. You know, we had fog machines, all kinds of stuff. And I convinced them to get in the coffins. I heard the promotion man said, where am I going to get coffins from? So I called the funeral home, who I'm close to now, Sheila, Branch Funeral Home at Kedzie. Block east of Kedzie and Roosevelt. And they loaned us, we even had a small one for Bushwick. I had pallbearers. I had pallbearers and everything, man.
You went all up.
Oh, man, look. Those are the memories. That's the memories.
Have you ever been starstruck?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. So
none
who was the most famous person that ever been in your store?
Oh, God, let's see. I mean, you go to LL Cool J, Biggie. Biggie was there before he became hit, before he had a hit record.
I know you got a Biggie. What's the Biggie story?
Well, it's a shame, but I think I might have been the last person's hand he shook before he got killed. I was at the Automotive Museum that night. My wife was coordinating. It was Tangeray was doing the event at the Automotive Museum, in Los Angeles. I was at the reception desk. I was at the reception desk and talking to. There was a group called Profile at the time. The lead singer and his dad. We were near the steps at the entrance, and Diddy and Biggie came in together. And I shook hands. He said, "Hey, George, where should I go?" Because me and Puffy are cool. Biggie knew me, and so I sent them to the back where everybody was. They didn't stay long at all because I was still there standing there talking. And so when they came by and they were getting ready to go, I walked out to the two SUVs, hugged them all, and they got out, and I came back in. And we heard the shots, but we didn't pay no attention to it. It was around the corner. It was like a big driveway behind the Automotive. It wasn't a street. It was part of the property. And I didn't hear about him being shot until I got to an after party. And people were crying and what have you. I said, what happened? They said, Biggie just got shot. And I said, holy crap, that's what I heard. Yeah.
So you feel like you was the last person to shake his hand?
Yeah, because they pulled out. It had to be the last person because nobody else. I saw them pull off.
Wow.
Yeah. And then what was it? 6 months later, in March, was it 96? When Tupac?
I think Pac got killed before Biggie.
Yeah, exactly. Had him backwards.
You ever met Pac before?
Yeah, I pictured with him. And I was at the fight that night. I saw Sugar them chase that dude through. We were sitting at the restaurant. Me, Tom Burrell. I don't know if you ever heard of Burrell Advertising.
Yeah.
The company. Me, my wife, him, and his wife. We were in the restaurant off the casino floor, and we saw them chasing this dude through the casino. The night they were stomping that dude. And then because Suge was opening this new club that night called the 702.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to go to that. And so we got our limo once all that commotion stopped, and we rode around. Traffic was crazy. And so we went off because the driver, he said there's been some kind of disturbance or shooting and so on. So we got to the 702. The guy had announced the party's been canceled. Tupac has been shot. So I was there for that event as well.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's legendary, yeah.
Yeah.
That's legendary.
Yeah. Because actually, did I have that picture? I got to look at my collection, but Suge and Tupac was staying at the Alexa Hotel.
Yeah.
You know, we were staying at that hotel, my wife and I. And I saw them. We were sitting in the casino, or sitting at the restaurant or something, and Suge saw me and came over. And I went back and met Tupac that night.
How was Pac? He was cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. But you know, that was a bad move for him to get hooked up with Suge, because if you listen to Tupac's early conversations and what have you, they were so pro-black versus what he turned into.
Yeah.
You know, so, but his mother was a Black Panther and so forth, and you know, that was a major loss, man.
Yeah. I know, before we wrap up, I got like two questions. I know you mentioned you knew Diddy, and we mentioned Kills. I know you say, and this question is about discipline, because you show a lot of discipline throughout your life. That's what I've been seeing, and that you preaching. You say it was one point in time you was on the bus with Kills, and you was checking IDs, because you ain't want him to get into trouble.
I was in the front of the bus. You know, we had gone that last tour, and this is, he had been indicted and stuff and what have you, and you know, he had a bunch of enablers around him and what have you, and then he keeps so much stuff hidden, you didn't know what he was doing. And so I took charge of the situation, and so after every show, you know, them chicks going to jump on the bus. I was out there checking IDs, checking what have you. And some of his folks, his other guys said, man, what are you doing? I said, man, what are you talking about? You know what the hell had happened, so I'm doing what I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and next thing you know, it wasn't long before that, they didn't need me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he wanted to do his thing. It's,
and that was the last of your relationship?
well, no, I wouldn't say the last of it. See, my wife was still his publicist. You know, I forget which birthday it was. He gave me one of the biggest, most beautiful birthday parties at his mansion out there. Yeah, it was incredible how he did that party for me.
Did you feel like, should we be able to separate the music from the man's actions?
Definitely. I have. I still like the music. I mean, music. I mean, his creativity and what have you. Hey, great songs, great meanings. I believe I can fly, all kinds of stuff. You know. But
World's greatest graduation song, like that.
Yeah, but he. I'm disappointed. You know, I was there when we were shooting Ignition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they arrested him at the hotel. Before we were all, the night before, because we were at the set, this restaurant on Collins. That's where we shot Ignition at. And when he got arrested, then he got bailed out. He came to the video shoot like nothing had happened. And we went on with the video shoot. I mean, he was a different type of character. You would think something like that would bug you, and it
just kept
it rolling, man. Yeah. Yep.
And then when you fast forward to a guy like Diddy going through what he's going through, like, can you like how are you and some of the greats around you? How did y'all stay disciplined throughout the times where y'all didn't let y'all personal life get interfered with like the business of the music?
Well, like I tell everybody, I preach especially the younger people today, your best friend is in the mirror. If that person lied to you, you got a problem. You got to have a conversation with yourself. It's just like God. You know, I have nothing against preachers and people that, look, he's invisible, okay? But the God in you isn't. That's who you deal with. Mm-hmm. The God in you. That's where he's at. And see, so...
Because this Puff going to be a big hit for the music industry, I ain't going to lie.
Yeah,
for black music, at least.
You know, everybody's an individual. And, you follow your path, and it catches up to you if you do negative things, you know, one way or the other. And for Diddy, the things that he has done, and see, I've been to the parties, but never those after parties. He always invited me to the parties, but I never went to the after parties. You know, so those things I was not aware of that we've been hearing about now. And just like with Rob used to have girls hidden in the studio, in different rooms or what have you. They'd be locked in the rooms and stuff. I didn't know that. My wife didn't know. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, over there on Larrabee Tracks studio. Yeah. You know, so I did the European tour. You know, when he took the Queen Mary over to Europe just before 9/11, and because like you said, he didn't fly. So he took the ship.
He took a ship to Europe?
Yeah, the Queen Mary, the big, yeah. And so he took over there, him and the crew. And then 9/11 hit. And so he was literally the only American artist in Europe at the time. And from what I was told, he wanted to come home. And then Barry Weiss, the president of Jive Records, he called me, which was a surprise. And he said, "George, I need you to do me a favor." I said, "Well, Rob's the only artist in America, from America that's in Europe, and everybody's gone. And he wants to leave, but we want him to stay to finish his tour." I said, "Yeah, well, what do you want me to do?" "Well, we know you have a big influence on him. If we can get you to go and convince him to stay." And this is like 2 weeks or so after 9/11 and what have you. And so I agreed to do it, me and my wife. We flew to Dusseldorf, Germany. We got on the plane. We damn near the only people on planes back then. Everybody was scared to fly. And so we went to Dusseldorf, Germany. That's where he was. Went to the hotel. Man, people were shocked to see us. The staff, the band, everybody. And Rob was out. He came in. He saw us. He was excited. And so he said, "Man, what y'all doing here?" So I said, "Come on, let's go have a talk." So we had a conversation. And I persuaded him to stay. And he said, "I'll stay on one condition." I said, "Well," he said, "You got to stay with me." So finished the tour with him. We were over there for over a month. Traveled all through Europe. It was interesting. It was exciting. It was a different experience. Yeah.
I got to get to Europe, man. I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You've seen a lot. You've done a lot.
Well, for me, it was a thing, taking the tour buses through Europe, and seeing things that you read about when you were kids, the White Cliffs of Dover and all of that stuff, Yeah, it was pretty cool hanging out in Paris. And then when we were in London, I went for a walk in the neighborhood, and I said, "Hey," it was Hyde Park in London. Looked just like the Hyde Park here.
Really?
And so I went back to the hotel. I said, "Who built this neighborhood?" He gave me a pamphlet, a little booklet of the history of Hyde Park there. It's the same dude that designed Hyde Park here.
Really?
Yeah. Just like the University of Chicago, you see all of that British-looking architecture.
Yeah.
That's where the concept came from.
I know they got one out there, but I didn't know they designed it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to leave with this. Every time I sit with an artist or a guest for the first time, I ask them, like, what's that moment they look for when they made it? But this is probably the first time I probably sat with a living legend that had been through it all. So for you, you already probably had that I made it moment. So what was that I made it moment for you when it happened? When you were like, "Yo, I'm a legend. I'm stamped like I'm here." What was that for you?
Well, I'm gonna say I'm not gonna think about me being a legend or what have you. I'm just honored to be respected by so many people based upon my actions and the way I've conducted myself, which I learned from those that were my examples growing up. And so I still don't consider myself a legend. I consider myself as a kind person, a person that loves people, and treats them right. It's legend is a title other people put on you. You don't put it on yourself, from my point of view. But I appreciate being respected the way that I'm respected. But then again, that's based upon my actions, which are based upon my examples and exposures growing up. My father, my aunts, my grandmother, my mother, my sisters, my brother. I mean, I've got a little bit of everybody in me. Again, when I told you about my travels as a kid all the way up, in essence, most folks have just one set of parents. When you look at all the places I've been, I had so many role models that influenced me. When I first went to Texas, learned how to fish and go crabbing, and my uncle Calvin taught me how to hunt, shoot a rifle. Oh, man. And my cousin used to love for me to come over because, living in New York, we didn't have no grass. I do their chores. And this was no electric motor. The push lawnmower. All my cousins used to use the hell out of me. Come on, my nickname was Danny, Little Danny. And they love for Little Danny to come over because he cut the grass. And they had the big yards, down there. So, but it's you're made up of your life's experiences. And as old as I am, I'm still learning. But the one thing I owe to my father is how you treat people. Is how you're going to be treated. You just keep it simple. Because it's a journey, and you don't realize how short it is till you get older and say, damn. And the greatest advantage I have right now is, like I was saying, is my health. To be this age and no major medical issues based on even what I did to myself. Like I told you, that 10-year addiction and all that stuff. And I'm in pretty good shape. So I'm grateful for that.
All right, man. Mr. George, Uncle George, I appreciate you for blessing us with your time and your stories, man. And we got to do this again.
Not a problem. I'd be glad to.
Yes, sir, man.
Thank you all.
I'm CODY, Uncle George. What's the word? We out.